Newsfirst at 9. Headlines.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News at 9, coming to you live from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. I'm Stephen Lazarus and here are your headlines. Individual buried alive following an earth slip. 2 others survived the incident. Bilateral talks between the heads of state of Sri Lanka and Afghanistan. Peace is the greatest guarantor of rights, a statement by the visiting Afghan president. Crimean parliament vote in favor of becoming a part of Russia. Referendum on the status of Crimea to be held on the 19th of March. Let's now cross over to our main desk for a more comprehensive look at these stories.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. Well, I'm Shahin Durrangpati. Very good evening to you.
And I'm Mahina Bongso. Thank you very much for joining us. We start off with a look at news-making headlines here at home. An individual died after being buried under an earth embankment in Gannorua, Kandy. 2 others who sustained injuries were admitted to hospital for treatment.
An earth embankment collapsed this morning while renovation activities were taking place on the side of the Peradeniya Gannorua road. Our correspondent based in the area said that 3 labourers were buried under the mound of earth. Locals in the area and the Kandy Fire Department worked together to rescue the trapped workers. The injured persons were admitted to the Peradeniya Teaching Hospital for treatment. 1 labourer, who was in critical condition, succumbed to his injuries. The construction had been undertaken by a subcontractor attached to the Road Development Authority. The locals in the area said that the labourers were not wearing any protective gear during the renovation work. Our attempts to contact the Road Development Authority to inquire into the matter proved futile.
A high-level segment of the 25th Human Rights Council session took place this afternoon.
Our heads met in Sri Lanka in November 2013 and have collectively urged Commonwealth members to accelerate efforts towards the ratification of all major international human rights instruments and to support the establishment and strengthening of national human rights institutions in compliance with the Paris Principles. In May 2014, we will have reached the mid-term of the 2nd cycle of the UPR. However, it is still indeed a new mechanism. States under review, as much as those participating in the review of their peers, bear a shared responsibility in ensuring that their engagement contributes to the preservation of the universality and the strengthening of the credibility and the efficiency of the mechanism. To that aim, we encourage Commonwealth members to champion the generalization of the good practices, these being the submission of voluntary mid-term reports to the Council on the status of implementation of UPR recommendations and the formulation of a limited number of recommendations that are precise, constructive and practical.
Meanwhile, the annual report by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is scheduled to be tabled at the UNHRC session today. Minister of External Affairs Professor G.L. Pires, who is attending the United Nations Human Rights Council session, is expected to meet with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Navi Pillai in Geneva today. Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Raminath Arisinghe, speaking to Newsfirst, said that the meeting will take place at the High Commissioner's office in Geneva. Navi Pillai's second 4-year term as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is due to conclude in a couple of months. This is incidentally the final Human Rights Council session that will be chaired by Navi Pillay. Pillay, who is a leading South African lawyer and activist, was appointed to the position of UN Human Rights Commissioner in July 2008. A new High Commissioner will take up the mantle in September this year.
President of Afghanistan Hamid Karzai says that Sri Lanka is in a correct position to do well with regards to human rights. The visiting head of state made the statement during a media briefing in Colombo today.
The Afghan perspective is for peace and for stability. We believe that without peace there cannot be a guarantee for the protection and respect of human rights. Therefore, peace will bring to Sri Lanka the betterment of human rights. We understand your predicament very, very much. We have suffered the same way as you have suffered. You are placed in the right place to do well with regards to human rights, with regards to the protection of human rights, and with regards to progress that you've achieved. Now, I'm trying to be very careful here with regard to my views on international organizations and how at times they behave. But it's for us, our countries, to make sure that the rights of our citizens are respected and protected and promoted by all means. It's also for us to make sure that we are peaceful and remain peaceful. And I know, as a citizen of a war-torn country, that war is the biggest enemy of rights, and that peace is the greatest guarantor of rights.
A journalist also raised a question on the peace process in Afghanistan during the press conference.
You spoke about Pakistan. In Pakistan at the moment, with ceasefire, even with the ceasefire being called, the Taliban are still carrying out attacks on Pakistani military installations and civilian targets as well. We had similar experiences in Sri Lanka as well with the LTTE, where during a ceasefire period we had a lot of attacks that were happening. Given this background, do you think that it is possible that a peace process that peace talks with the Taliban will work for Afghanistan, or is a military option the only option?
I'm seeking peace, and peace through talks. Pakistan is unfortunately suffering as much or even more than we are. It's good that they are talking to the Taliban. They must continue to persist and to insist on talks. Certainly, talks between the Pakistani Taliban and the Pakistani government will have an impact on Afghanistan in a positive way, and will be replicated certainly in Afghanistan. So we are happy that they are talking. We encourage it, and we would like to join hands with them in helping them in whatever manner we can, just as we expect Pakistan to join hands with us and to help us in our peace process.
Well, before moving on, one of our local news, Sri Lanka just clinched victory over Bangladesh by 3 wickets in the last group match of the Asia Cup. We'll have more details on our sports bulletin this evening. But in the meantime, President Mahinda Rajapaksa and Afghanistan President Hamid Karzai held bilateral discussions at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo this morning.
President of Afghanistan Hamid Karzai was welcomed at the Presidential Secretariat, and a military guard of honor was accorded to the visiting Afghan president. Sri Lanka and Afghanistan reached several agreements today. The presidential spokesperson and international media unit said that agreements were signed on cooperation in areas of human resources, sports, education and health. Education was an area that the two delegations discussed for further cooperation. Afghanistan requested from Sri Lanka an opportunity to send students to study at Sri Lankan universities in fields such as medicine, engineering, business and nursing. Another area Afghanistan was keen on seeking Sri Lanka's assistance for sports. The Afghans were particularly seeking assistance of cricket coaches from Sri Lanka.
The residences of the Commissioner General of the Excise Department and the OIC of the Special Investigations Unit of the Excise Department were shot at this morning. The police said that the identity of the shooter is yet to be ascertained.
The residence of the Commissioner General of the Excise Department located in Jail and the residence of the OIC of the Special Investigations Unit of the Excise Department located in Rukmagama in Kottava were shot at this morning. No casualties were reported owing to gunshots, but structural damage to the houses and the vehicles of these individuals have been reported. This is a residence of Commissioner General of the Excise Department located in the Pamanugama area in Mahavatta, Jail.
I woke up to the sound of gunshots. When I looked through the window, I saw two individuals running towards the Alakanda area. The residents living on the Alakanda road said they heard noises of a three-wheeler powering up. I heard the gunshots and found out that 2 or 3 of my windows were badly damaged.
The residence of Rossman Fernando, the OIC of the Special Investigations Unit of the Excise Department located in the Rukmagama housing complex in Kottava, also came under gunfire.
We heard the gunshots at around 3 a.m. and we woke up. A similar incident had also occurred 10 days ago. We heard 2 gunshots. I have been carrying out a number of special raids in the recent past. We still cannot find out as to why this incident transpired. This should have been planned as the gunshots were directed at both the commissioners and my house at the same time.
A referendum on the status of Crimea will take place on the 16th of March, where Crimeans will be asked to decide if the autonomous republic stays part of Ukraine or joins the Russian Federation.
Now, it was reported that pro-Russian authorities in Crimea have requested Russian President Vladimir Putin for the region to join the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, Russia's state news agency reported today that the Council of the European Union has adopted sanctions to freeze the financial assets within the EU of ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and another 17 others identified as having misused state funds.
The EU's 28 foreign ministers approved the list last evening, and the measures will apply for a period of 12 months starting today.
A tense standoff continues in Ukraine's southern Crimea region as Russian naval ships block the entrance to the port of Sevastopol, the region's key shipping hub and naval headquarters for both Russia's and Ukraine's Black Sea fleets. Residents of Crimea are going about business as usual, and there were no clear signs of military tension. However, the situation is different across the bay as Russian naval vessels are blocking access to the port of Sevastopol from either direction, as well as both entrances to the Kerch Strait, which is a narrow waterway on either side of the peninsula, only 5 kilometers long, that separates Crimea from Russia. Russia's 4th largest fleet is anchored in the waters, approximately 25 ships. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says attempts by Western countries to take action over the Ukraine crisis via democracy watchdog OSCE and the NATO military alliance are not helping cooperation and dialogue.
I want to briefly say that we had a meeting with US Secretary of State John Kerry on the situation in Ukraine in relation to the actions that our partners are trying to take via the OSCE, the NATO-Russia Council and other international organizations. Action that does not help create an atmosphere for dialogue and constructive cooperation. John Kerry accepted that such atmosphere needs to be created, that under the conditions of threats and ultimatums, it is very hard to work on honest agreements that would help the Ukrainian people to stabilize the situation. And we agreed that it is necessary to help Ukrainians, all Ukrainians, to implement the agreements achieved on the 21st of February.
Russian soldiers stationed at Ukrainian military bases in Crimea were given orders to leave overnight, but this morning most of them had reappeared. A group of mainly women in Simferopol clashed with pro-Russian protesters outside the Ukrainian army base in the Crimean capital. The women who were calling for peace and dialogue were attacked by several men who tore down their handwritten posters from them and tried to chase them from the scene. Crimea is under control of Russian forces who seized it last week, although Moscow says self-defense units of men in uniform without insignia are not under its command. A UN special envoy had to abandon a mission to Crimea after being stopped by armed men and besieged inside a cafe by a hostile crowd shouting "Russia, Russia."
Scuffles broke out in Donetsk in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Moscow activists attacked rival demonstrators. Pro-Russian activists armed with pepper spray started to attack pro-Ukrainian activists who were leaving Lenin Square after the rally. Police tried to separate the rival groups, but there were no reports of people being arrested.
Here's a report filed by Dr. Susanta Gamage, who resides in Kharkiv, Ukraine, on the developments there.
The situation here in Ukraine is a lot calmer now than it was a week ago. There are less people protesting and organizing meetings. Daily life is slowly returning to normal. There were many disturbances before because the currency that Ukrainians use fell heavily in comparison to the dollar. Especially those who are in the export and import business strongly felt this disparity. Everyone was concerned about their salaries and if the country will go to war. But now, things are slowly returning to normal and the disparity between the dollar and their currency is no longer that great. The people are hopeful that there will not be a war. They do not like it. And people hope there will be a peaceful resolution.
The United Nations Human Rights Council sessions are underway right now in Geneva. Here's the latest that's coming out from Geneva. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Navi Pillay says that the time has come for the UN Human Rights Commission to establish its own international inquiry into the end of the conflict in Sri Lanka. Navi Pillay is currently presenting her annual report for 2013 to the 25th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council.
Nearly 5 years on from the end of the conflict in Sri Lanka, I regret that the government has failed to satisfy the Council's call for a credible and independent investigation into allegations of serious human rights violations. I am therefore recommending that the time has come for the Council to establish its own international inquiry mechanism, which I believe can play a positive role where domestic mechanisms have failed.
Now on to other local news. A media briefing was held today under the auspices of Minister of Rehabilitation and Prison Reforms, Chandrasiri Gajadira. Now at the press conference, journalists raised a question whether Potanafer, a death row inmate, was present at a religious event held at the Bogambara prison recently. The Secretary has been advised to conduct an investigation.
Can a death row inmate like Potanafer be at a place like that? That is the issue.
No, he should be placed in a secured cell, taking into account his safety and the safety of the others.
There were 4 prisoners. One of them was Potanafer. He was not in his cell during that day. I informed this to the minister.
Let's now take a look at some of the views expressed in the political arena ahead of the upcoming provincial council polls.
During my short period in Parliament, I heard the MPs and ministers say that the people in the country have been fooled. They said the people can depend on jackfruit and homegrown vegetables. However, once in every 4 months, when the Parliament offers milk rice for breakfast, they protest saying that they cannot eat it. They want to eat cornflakes that is brought from abroad. What happened now? The people have no stable economy. The people have no way to live. They are now resorting to catch geckos at home. They cut ega wood and other plants. That is how the people live now. What will happen in the end? Politicians are making promises upon promises to the people and they are sick of it. Even as a youth, I think, why are we making promises? There is no reason to make promises. We are seeking the votes to work. What do we need to make promises for? We are making promises of things that we cannot achieve. We need to fulfill what we can do. Why do we need to talk on the issue in Geneva? We need to talk on how we are to protect the country. Everyone is now focused on the Geneva issue and not the issues of the people. They don't care for the people, they only care for the votes. They gave 750 rupees to the mother and the father of the fallen heroes at temple trees. It looked like to be from temple trees, but the money was provided after slashing funds from the soldiers' salaries. I have seen security personnel go to their respective district secretariat to search for the marriage certificates of their parents. Ask these police officers how much is given to their parents. Ranil Wickramasinghe will always and forever remain in the opposition. He has no other option. They are falling apart. 6 months after the results of the election are announced, those who were appointed will head back to the president and say that they will join the UPFA and render their support. My son too is contesting. He is good and educated. He looks like his father.
Gampa district candidate of the United People's Freedom Alliance, Attorney at Law Susar Dinal, says that the time has come for a broader dialogue on those who are committed to improve the cultural and moral values in society.
Apart from religious observances and imparting religious knowledge, a temple also provided the necessary education to create a generation that is filled with morals. Whenever I visit a temple, I am introduced as a journalist or otherwise someone who is preparing to enter politics. However, I prefer to be introduced as a Sunday school teacher. No one is going to say something bad about it. Everyone speaks good of the Sunday school teacher because that is a righteous profession.
The
event to lay the foundation stone for a building at the Kimbulpitiya Surya Desikarama temple in Katunayaka took place this morning under the auspices of Attorney at Law Susara Dinal.
United National Party Colombo district candidate S.M. Marikar met with the local residents of Berendiyawatha in Valampitiya in Kolonnawa last evening.
During the time of the war, the parents were always in fear over the return of their children from school. They were in waiting. Will the husband return? Will their siblings return? The people paid their gratitude to the government in 2009 for ending the war. The women were the ones who paid that tribute. Those same people are now in hunger. Some have no way to afford 3 meals a day. They only have 2 meals, and while the rest can only afford 1 meal a day.
Meanwhile, a UNP public rally was held in the Mulkirigala area in Hambantota district today ahead of the Southern Provincial Council elections. I am speaking to you all based on this book that was given to me by a farmer from the Hambantota district and who is part of the farmers' pension scheme. It is mentioned in this book that a sum of 1,250 rupees will be granted. Therefore, this particular farmer has gone to the post office to collect that amount that he is due. The officials have ridiculed him, saying that this amount will not be given. This, my friends, is the new wonder the farmers are faced with.
In business news tonight, a trade delegation of business leaders representing top US companies with corporate offices in India are currently engaging in a tour of Sri Lanka. The visit is being facilitated by the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka.
The main focus of this delegation, which will remain in the island for 3 days, is to seek trade investment opportunities and to understand firsthand the business climate in Sri Lanka. AmCham is hopeful that lucrative trading opportunities and new investments would flow into the country on successful completion of this visit. AmCham also organised an event in Colombo today to raise awareness amongst the visiting delegation on the Sri Lankan economic environment.
We will probably move to some extent from being a trade-related country where we were only used to exporting and importing to a new segment of services-related activities in our economy, which will ensure that Sri Lanka is able to use all the facilities that it has on a much better basis, and the capacity utilization will definitely help us to achieve the growth that we are searching for. And the growth that we are searching for is an ambitious one, 8% on an average basis. Sri Lanka's medium-term framework projections are encouraging. We are moving to a 8% plus growth towards 2016. The macro fundamentals are being targeted to be on benign levels on a continuous basis. And we have built the spaces within our economy to be able to take on any shock, so that if there is any shock, that we have the space and the cushion to absorb it and then to move forward, so that we can take those shocks and then move forward without having to be slowed down.
Well, it was an evening full of contention in argument and dispute. Who added value in the boardroom? Is it marketing or finance? Now, for the first time in Sri Lanka, chief marketing and financial officers locked horns in a heated debate in Colombo last evening to prove that the sector they represent was better than the other.
Long-term survival of an organization depends on finance or marketing.
It was an evening full of contention in argument and dispute. Who adds value in the boardroom? Is it marketing or finance?
Not the world of percentages and ratios.
If you share critical information pertaining to credit and risk,
Bring your fight to the forum. 3 chief financial officers and 3 chief marketing officers debated on the topic, in the modern era, does the success and long-term survival of an organization depend on marketing or finance? Bringing forth quotes, local and international business examples and arguments that was a learning experience to those who were present. The event was attended by a group including top business executives in Sri Lanka. The debate comprised of 2 rounds and saw speakers taking jabs at each other from the word go.
Marketing nati ayataneka finance tactic to gahandada.
Finance nati hotele parippu nati hoteleyak wage.
Who creates this brand? This brand is what was created by marketing.
good financial health of any organization is necessary. And the custodians, the people who look at that, are really the financial professionals.
I don't have anything to say because my learned colleagues never gave us anything to talk.
An SMS poll judged marketing the winner over finance. The debate, first of its kind, was organized by the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association and Newsfirst.
Well, today's U reports are filed by Suranga Rajatha from Ahaliyagoda and Janaka Sampath from Mathagama.
ඊයේ සවස ඇහැලියගොඩ රත්නපුර මාර්ගයේ ඇහැලියගොඩ ප්‍රදේශයේදී
An accident occurred along the Ahaliyagoda-Ratnapura main road near Ahaliyagoda. The accident was a result of a collision involving a 3-wheeler, a bicycle and a bus. The rider of the bicycle sustained injuries and was admitted to the Avisavilla hospital, where he later succumbed to his injuries.
මම Newsfirst U reporter සුරංග රාජිත ඇහැලියගොඩ සිට.
What you are seeing is the bridge near the Uddugama Central College and the Uddugama Niribatduwa road. The bridge has no protective fence and the concrete slabs have broken as well. The residents request a new bridge to be constructed.
Newsfirst U reporter Janaka Sampath, Mathagama City.
Another stage of the Newsfirst workshop was held in Mamanala today.
The 118th workshop, which was organized by Newsfirst, was held in the Medirigama Central College in Mavanala. The Newsfirst team that visited the school to conduct the workshop was warmly welcomed by the students of the school. The students were informed both theoretically and practically about news reporting and the activities that take place in a newsroom. Several students from the Makadabara College in Mavanala were also in attendance at the workshop. While the students were informed about the new developments in media, they were also given an opportunity to showcase their own talents.
අද දවසේ මෙඩේරිගම මහාවිද්‍යාලයට සුවිශේෂී වූ දිනයක් හැටියට අපි සලකනු ලබනවා. මේ විදිහට
We think today is a very special day for college. It is commendable that Newsfirst would visit such a school to educate children. They also demonstrated the practical side of media. Our school will always be grateful to Newsfirst. We have never experienced something like this before. We have no idea how these programs are done. So we are thankful for giving us this opportunity.
We have never had this experience before. From the beginning we learned that there is nothing that we cannot do.
Well, it was a match that went down to the wire and kept the Bangladeshi and Sri Lankan fans at the edge of their seats. But Sri Lanka won the 10th match of the 2014 Asia Cup against Bangladesh by 3 wickets with 6 balls remaining. The match, which was held in Mirpur, saw surprises which stunned both Sri Lankan and Bangladeshi cricket fans. Bangladesh won the toss and opted to bat first. Now, despite a 74-run opening stand between Anamul Haq and Shamsur Rahman, the rest of the Bangladeshi lineup failed to contribute with reasonable scores. The home side lost wickets at regular intervals and could only post 204 runs on the board for the loss of 9 wickets in their allotted 50 overs. Anamul Haq top scored with 49 runs, while Suranga Lakmal, Thisara Pereira, Ajantha Mendis and Ashan Priyanjan bagged 2 scalps each for Sri Lanka. Chasing 205 runs to win, Sri Lanka got off to a disastrous start, losing 3 wickets for just 8 runs. Ashan Priyanjana managed to score 24 runs before being undone by Zero Rahman. Lairuthrimana chipped in with 33 runs before he too was undone. Skipper Angelo Matthews then paired up with Chaturanga De Silva to steady the Sri Lankan innings and led them to victory. Matthews made 74 not out.
For his 50th king mode, that's why he's been using. That's such a good shot. It wasn't a great delivery from.
With that, we wrap up Primetime News for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Don't forget to catch Vantage Point. That's coming up soon after the news on MTV Sports. I'm Mahina Bongso.
And I'm Shahan Jurang Party. Good night and take care.
Hotline 0114-896-896. www.newsfirst.lk. Feedback at newsfirst.lk.